1 hour later, he is playing us and the president. What should I say to this a-hole? He is playing with the most powerful man on the planet.
When you read your own words back to you and they're exactly opposite of what you just testified to, your credibility just goes out the window. So when you have a lawyer like Costello getting sideways with the judge, not a good thing. And the judge threatened that if you do this again, I'm going to throw out your entire testimony and I'm going to have you removed from the courtroom. That's terrible. I mean, and he's a lawyer. But he says, he says, are you staring me down? And he goes, I wanted you to know that your actions are contemptuous. You do not stare me down.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers with our content genius, Michael Rivers, behind the camera. Today we're reacting to Donald Trump and the end of the trial, the hush money trial. And before we get to that, before we get to the final witness and kind of an analysis of what this trial is going to mean and just where they go from here, this is brought to you by eForms.com. eForms.com. Let's say you have an unwanted grandma living in your basement and you need to get her out. Well, you can get an eviction form. She's a tenant at will. She doesn't pay anything. Or you get a bill of sale for selling her crotch rocket. Or you get a power of attorney because she can't handle her affairs. Or you get a medical power of attorney because she needs some medical directive and how to care for her later on. Or a rental agreement, or any kind of agreement that you need, any kind of thing that you need to keep out of court, you go to eForms.com. eForms.com, a highly effective way to avoid expensive people like me and keep you out of court. Because having a written agreement, having a written power of attorney, gives you the power and the security to know that you are protected, whether it's a transaction, whether it's the power of attorney, or whether it's a rental agreement. Whatever you need, go to eForms.com. Okay, today they wrapped up the hush money trial in New York City for Donald J. Trump. Now, and did Trump testify? Did he testify? No, he did not. Donald Trump did not testify, and that is not surprising. Why? Because they would have eaten his lunch. They would have been there for another week, honestly. There's so much there. He made so many statements. There's so many things he talked about, so many ways that they could trip him up. It was the smartest decision to not have him testify. And people say all this kind of stuff. Oh, he's guilty if he doesn't testify. No, that's not true. He's not guilty if he doesn't testify. The thing about him not testifying, though, is that the jury can't infer anything negative about it. You cannot consider his silence. You have the absolute Fifth Amendment right to remain silent during a trial. You can testify if you want to, but if you choose not to, nobody could hold that decision against you. They can't say, oh, you must be guilty because you're not saying you're innocent. If a prosecutor did that, that would be a reversible error, and they couldn't come back and prosecute him later. It would be a mistrial. And mistrials based on prosecutorial misconduct result in a dismissal with prejudice. That means they can't bring it up again. So I'm not surprised at all that Trump didn't testify. I think that was a smart decision. I am surprised, however, that the defense called Costello to the stand. Costello, as you remember, he was advising Michael Cohen and not really sure that this was a smart decision on the part of the defense. Because, for starters, he got sideways with the judge, and that just didn't make sense. There was an objection by the state, by the plaintiff in this case, and Mr. Costello is rolling his eyes, and he says, geez, and he's making all these comments, and he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer, and he gets really sideways with the judge. And then he says, strike that. Strike that. He's not the fucking judge. And so they took a break. The jury was out of the room. And he says, you don't say geez when there's an objection. And you don't say strike that because I'm the only one that... here's the thing. judges are very parochial about their courtroom and the procedure and, decorum. And so then shortly after that, he was about to bring the jury back in. He goes, hold on a second, clear the courtroom. That usually doesn't happen. In fact, I can tell you that's never happened in my career. And I've tried a lot of cases. But he says, he says, are you staring me down? And he goes, I want you to know that your actions are contemptuous. You do not stare me down. Now, it might seem, petty, but I can tell you the communication you make with your body language is huge. I know of a prosecutor that got sanctioned because she kept rolling her eyes, and like, you can't do that. You can't do that. I've been guilty of it myself. I remember I was trying a case, and we got to the end of the state's case, and I thought they really didn't prove the assault that happened. I thought there's just no way. And I moved for judgment of acquittal. And I felt so strongly about it, I thought that there's no way the judge isn't going to grant my motion. And the judge denied my motion. And I'm like, fuck. I don't think I said fuck, but I know I'm like, you can't show your disdain. You gotta be a poker face. And he says, Mr. Rivers, blah, 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 And remember the Parkland shooter? That's a little more brazen, where the lawyer is flipping either the court or somebody off. I don't know who they were flipping off, but they got in trouble for that. So when you have a lawyer like Costello getting sideways with the judge, not a good thing.
It's a lot of intensity, to say the least, Jose, as Anna mentioned, right? We're now in redirect from the defense here on their own witness. I got to say, just kind of reading the tea leaves here and what we're hearing from inside the courtroom, this testimony so far from Robert Costello is fairly damning for the defense. They wanted to bring Robert Costello on the stand to refute essentially Michael Cohen's testimony, to say, as we heard from him yesterday, that Michael Cohen never said that Donald Trump had a relationship with Stormy Daniels. They never had sex. He never said this was for a reimbursement of Donald Trump, that Donald Trump never knew about the payment made to Stormy Daniels.
So one of the things, when you have a witness, and I don't know why the defense did this, but when you have a witness, you got to know all the questions the answer to all the questions you're going to ask, right? And my guess is that this was something that Trump demanded that they call Costello, because they had to know these emails that are coming up. You'll see this in a second, that these emails were out there. And so remember, Costello was trying to be Cohen's lawyer. Costello was trying to rein him in and trying to tell him, you've got friends in high places. You've got, to try to keep him in the fold. In other words, I don't want you flipping on Trump.
But instead what they are doing, especially during cross-examination by Susan Hoffinger, is kind of ticking away at Robert Costello's credibility, right? We have talked a lot about how the defense was going to chip away at the credibility of Michael Cohen and witnesses like Stormy Daniels as well. Well, in fact, the prosecution is doing that exact same thing as they did during cross-examination to Robert Costello. And I want to read you through some of what we heard from Robert Costello's testimony so far this morning, because it is fascinating.
So what she's going to do is she's going to read his own words in emails. And nothing is more damning than you saying one thing, and it's, but didn't you say this? And you can't really fucking argue with that.
So Hoffinger asks this. Your first meeting with Cohen at the Regency, you discussed how connected you were to Rudy Giuliani. Costello, not true. You're quoting from an email that was much later. Hoffinger, you were very close to Rudy Giuliani, and you've known him for 50 years. Yes, known him for years, and we went to a wedding. Hoffinger, you sent this email 2 days later. I'm going to read it from the jury, for the jury. I am sure you saw the news that Rudy is joining the Trump legal team. I told you that my relationship with Rudy could be very, very useful to you. So refuting what Robert Costello said on the stand a moment ago. Again, they do it again. Hoffinger, you continue to tell him that you could provide a back channel to Giuliani. No, that's not correct. Hoffinger, do you remember sending this email to Cohen? Costello, yes, I do. Here's the email, guys. Michael, I just spoke to Rudy Giuliani and told him I was on your team. Rudy was thrilled and said this could not be a better situation for the president or you. Again, refuting Costello's testimony. And this.
So one of the things, they have an instruction called falso in uno, falso in omnibus. And what that means is if you're lying about one thing, you're lying about everything. And one of the things that, you kind of liken it to, if somebody's lying to this jury, you can destroy a marriage with one lie. You can destroy a relationship with one lie. You can destroy a friendship with one lie. I didn't have sex with your wife. You can really destroy a lot with just one lie. And so you can tell the jury, look, you can throw out somebody's entire testimony if you don't believe what they said.
One, guys, which is incredibly damning, I would say, kind of finishing up cross-examination from Susan Hoffinger. And it starts with this. In June of 2018, this is Hoffinger. You were upset that he was playing you. Costello, no, that's the wrong word. I was informed. Hoffinger, didn't you believe he was also playing President Trump? Costello, I don't think that's correct.
Really? Oh, well, read on.
Hoffinger, yesterday you were asked a question by defense counsel whose interests did you have in mind? Hoffinger, you said your obligation was to Michael Cohen. Do you remember saying that? Costello, yes. Here's the email, guys. Hoffinger writes, Jeff, this is the response I received from Michael after sending him a detailed text, followed by a voicemail 1 hour later. He is playing us and the president. What should I say to this a-hole? He is playing with the most powerful man on the planet.
When you read your own words back to you and they're exactly opposite of what you just testified to, your credibility just goes out the window.
That email certainly speaks for itself, does it not, Mr. Costello? That is Hoffinger saying it to Robert Costello. Damning testimony, guys, to say the least.
So that's just part of it. And the judge threatened, if you do this again, I'm going to throw out your entire testimony and I'm going to have you removed from the courtroom. That's terrible. And he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer because as a lawyer, you can get sanctioned for that kind of stuff. So what we have here is if the case doesn't rise and fall on Michael Cohen, if it did, they'd probably have a problem. But we started with David Pecker. We end with Costello. Now, but we have other evidence. We have the checks that are handwritten. We have a recording between Michael Cohen and Donald Trump. And then, there's other emails from Cohen saying you don't represent me. I'm not your client. And Costello is really trying hard to get him into the fold, to control him so he doesn't turn on Donald Trump. And you see that email you just played us. It really kind of cuts against everything Costello testified to. So what else are they going to do? The closing arguments are going to be a week from today, next Tuesday. And so what are they going to do? Well, they're going to fight about the jury instructions because what the other crime is really important. Because and that's where I think the weakness in the government's case is. If they didn't define and fully explain to the jury what crime they are covering up, all you have are a bunch of misdemeanors, which are probably not prison. So they're going to really have to tie all this in their closing argument. So what they're doing now is they're gonna wrangle about the they're gonna haggle about the jury instructions, and there's all kinds of different jury instructions. What is reasonable doubt? What is circumstantial evidence? What is direct evidence? But then you get to the meat of the statute that he's charged with, and also what is the other crime that he's accused of? And that is the weakness in the government's case. Now, once they get that done, they'll come back to court on Tuesday, and on Tuesday the government starts with their closing argument. Then the defense goes, and then the government gets one more shot at rebuttal because it's their case, and you get that in every case. The plaintiff always gets a rebuttal, what's a rebuttal? Rebuttal is when you have the chance to address something the other party said, and your remarks have to be confined to what the other argument was. So when Bragg gets up, or his team, whoever's going to do the closing argument, they can't get up and re-give their whole closing argument. Their remarks have to be confined to the defense's closing argument, things that are in there. So you can say, like, now that you just heard from the defense, and they said this, But really, this is not that. Simplifying it, obviously. But that's what you have to do. And then after that happens, the judge reads the jury instructions to them, and then they get the case. And I don't know that they're sequestered. I've always not been in favor of sequestering a jury. They may be. I'm not 100% on that. I just think you're treating a juror like a jailbird. However, in this case, I would support sequestration. That's where they go to a hotel at the end of deliberations. They can't talk to anybody. They probably don't have TV. And if they do, it's just limited channels, I would think. But they keep them away from media, keep away from other outside influences. And then when they get their verdict, they give a note to the judge, and then they come back. Sometimes they'll have questions, could you read back testimony, which they never read back a testimony. But, and if they have a question, they all come back to the courtroom, and they give it to the judge, and then they read the question in open court. So it is fascinating from a criminal law standpoint what's happened during this trial. I mean, it's 20 days of testimony, about 50 hours worth of testimony, and Trump put on one witness who was ineffective and didn't testify himself, which I think was smart. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is that my God?